I say last but not least, the most important reason I think it must never be Jeremy Corbyn as this interim Prime Minister is because it's a betrayal of one of the most vulnerable minorities in this country. I am not prepared to repeat history and sell our Jewish cousins short down the road for short-term political gain. And that's what installing a Jeremy Corbyn Prime Minister would mean. It would mean a betrayal of our Jewish communities. It would mean them as equal citizens in this country, fearing genuinely that they would no longer be treated as such, not just in the Labour Party, but by the government itself. While the inquiry is ongoing into the into the alleged institutional anti-Semitism in the Labour Party, it would be a serious error to consider Corbyn as Prime Minister, and it would certainly not be a government of national unity were such a prospect to have emerged. And so these are the reasons why I think that there must be a compromise in this question as to who becomes this interim Prime Minister. But whoever it is, I say this to you now, whoever it is, it must never be Corbyn. It's as simple as that. It would lead to the breakup of the integrity of this country. It would lead to a betrayal of our Jewish communities. It would lead potentially only still to a further push towards a Brexit. And indeed, at the end of the day, it would also probably lead to a Boris Johnson victory. And keep in mind something, we're in these very, very turbulent times, but I am a firm believer in the key ingredients, as in I'm a firm believer in opposing the key ingredients that I believe lead to a rise or a repeat of 1930s style populism, otherwise known as fascism, and then in particular in the 1930s, Nazism. Now, we've just crossed the anniversary of the great and famous battle at Cable Street in London's East End. Now, that battle was by many on the left who fought the fascists on the street of Cable Street. The Jewish minorities were on their side, and who they were fighting was a man named Oswald Mosley. Oswald Mosley was the founder of the British Union of Fascists. He created what are known as the Black Shirts, who were street-level thugs who would run around as fascists do and beat people on the streets that they didn't like. That was one Oswald Mosley, the creator of the British Union of Fascists. Well, guess what? Which government did he serve in before he set up the fascists? Oswald Mosley was a member of the Labour government. He was Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster in a Labour government. Now, why that doesn't surprise me, that the real battle in Cable Street was a former extremist member of a Labour government who decided that he wanted to carry on with his fascist cause and set up the Black Shirts. Today, in today's times, we also see black shirts on the streets. This time, they're also covering their faces with masks. They call themselves Antifa. They're wearing black shirts. They, like the far left today, have also adopted anti-Semitic discourse, disguised as anti-Israel discourse. They are also fighting on the streets, just as Oswald Mosley's black shirts fought on the streets. They also claim origins in left-wing political discourse, just as Mosley's British Union of Fascists was spawned from previously being a member of the British Labour government. And what I'll say to you is the following. Be careful. Wherever this particular recipe rears its ugly head, be incredibly careful. When nationalism mixes with socialism and mixes with anti-Semitism, that's when you get fascism. So whenever you hear socialists start talking about national workers' rights over international workers' rights, as you can see with the hard left in Corbyn's Labour Party, preferring national workers' rights over international workers' rights, that's the beginning of the hardening of this left-wing stance that ends up becoming fascism. They mix it up a bit, national workers' rights with socialism. They mix it up a bit with anti-Semitism disguised as anti-capitalism, blaming all the Jewish bankers for the capitalist corporate economy. And there you have it. The product you end up in the end becomes fascism. It's no surprise that Mussolini spent years on the National Directorate of the Italian Socialist Party before setting up the Italian fascists. Mussolini was also a socialist before becoming a fascist. Oswald Mosley was also a socialist before becoming a fascist. This is the inconvenient truth that we must face in these difficult times in this country. If you go far left enough, you end up at the far right. That's what the political horseshoe theory is about. It's demonstrated through history. Hitler was an admirer of Mussolini, who also adopted, prior to becoming a Nazi, socialist economic policies. Now, I'm not saying socialists are fascists. What I am saying is if you go far left enough, you end up at the far right, and if you go far right enough, you end up at the far left, because it's a horseshoe. They are not wings like on an aeroplane. And it's for this reason we must be incredibly careful about installing Corbyn as Prime Minister in this country. Because when if he were to cut a deal with the SNP, I see the same key ingredients, a combination of nationalism for Scotland with socialism for the people, and yet to happen in Scotland. It hasn't happened to the SNP yet, adopting anti-Semitism. It has happened in the Labour Party. Those three key ingredients lead to fascism, and we must be incredibly careful in this country because we said never again, and that's why I'm saying never Corbyn. You're listening to Majid Nawaz, and the time is 12:17.